I want to move on to the criminal justice bill here. And this, of course, has now been submitted for its first reading in the House of Commons yesterday. So the criminal justice bill, a bill to amend the criminal law to make provision about criminal justice, including the powers and duties of the police, about dealing with offenders, to make provision about the confiscation and use of monies in suspended accounts, and so on. You can see that on screen at the moment. But I wanted to highlight a couple of key parts to this. First of all, let's have a look at this. They are going to make sentences longer for the most dangerous criminals, including by making rapists serve every day of their sentence behind bars. And people would say on the face of it, that's a very good thing. But equally, this bill will establish powers to transfer prisoners in and out of England and Wales to serve their sentences abroad. Now, we are in the situation at the moment where we have already a vastly overpopulated prison estate. There are some very large prisons being built at the moment. But nonetheless, it's not clear at this point what the mechanism would be for people to be removed from the UK in order to serve their sentences abroad. It's not clear which countries would receive them, and so on. And I think that's a pretty dangerous development when we start to see people being pushed out of the country into other prison regimes abroad under those circumstances. Let's move on. They say that they are going to give the police the powers they need to tackle theft by creating a new power to enter a premises without a warrant, to search for and seize stolen goods, such as phones located using GPS tracking technology. Now, of course, they'll always use a particular scenario in order to justify what it is they're doing. But I'm going to ask Charles for comment on this in a second. And then they go on to say, give the police greater access to the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency database to identify criminals. So, Charles, let me welcome you to the programme here. Now, you're a former police officer yourself. What are your thoughts on the removal of the judicial process in the sense of getting a warrant to enter premises?
Thanks, Mike, and good afternoon. I would describe it as being the thin end of the wedge, but I think we're quite far past that stage already. And specifically with powers of entry, I think it's one of those things that people probably don't understand as well they should. First of all, what is set out in law already, but also the degree to which that may be massaged or manipulated by police exercising the powers. So just to set the scene, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act from 1984 already grants powers of entry for the purposes of arrest or indeed for seizing evidence. And so in a sense, what's set out in the Criminal Justice Bill is an extension of that, but whether or not it's proportionate is a separate matter, and I would contend that it probably isn't. Also, it creates a massive administrative burden. It's overcomplicating existing powers and just gives police yet more things to have to deal with. Obviously, it's always championed by the legislators as creating more offences. But when you stop and think about that, the effect of having more offences is more confusion and more ways in which people may be trapped by an already completely over-encumbered and unwieldy system.
Yes, thank you for that. And of course, I just want to, if we just bring this back on the King's Speech and the legislation around that, as well as now being given access to DVLA, data investigatory powers amendments are going to bring in a whole load more of data collection and so on available to police as well. And just to end this, this was probably one of the most difficult parts of it, to help more vulnerable individuals off the streets and direct them to appropriate support. So the Criminal Justice Bill is going to make it effectively criminalise the homeless. We've already seen this in London in the last few days when 10 tents were removed from the streets, including all the possessions owned by what few possessions they did own by the homeless people involved. Removed by the police, not because they were breaking any law, but because the police got a phone call from University College London hospitals, who on their Twitter feed say that they want to be treated with kindness. They weren't particularly treating those people with kindness, it has to be said. So I think we're going to have to keep an eye on this legislation. This is another piece of legislation that really people should be getting organised against. And I would just encourage everybody to do that. Vanessa, hopefully we have you back now. So let's just come back to the map